Hey guys, what's the definition of Tuscaloosa?
I don't know. What is Tuscaloosa?
Thought it was a place.
No, it's not a place. It's the last thing an elephant wants to hear from his Italian dentist.
Oh, Carl.
You are the king of bad puns.
Dad jokes. Tuscaloosa.
Tuscaloosa.
That's like, what's the dentist's favorite time?
Tooth hurdy.
That's right.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
I like mine
Welcome
better.
to Father's Day weekend.
Right.
What's sadder, that I asked it or that you knew it?
Well, guys, we have about, I think, 9 stories lined up today. And we're saving the punny one for last. Title of the show is Knocking Our Socks Off. And RSocks is capital R, capital SOCKS. And we'll talk about that last. But that's not, I don't think that is the story of this week. I think the story is Symbiote.
Oh my God, the symbiote
Yeah.
is awesome. It's so awesome. I
That
Which is
means
always
it's
bad.
really bad.
Oh my
Always
God.
bad.
It's the awesomest thing, awesome ever. Awesome. Yeah, I was raving about this thing beforehand. So I saw this analysis by BlackBerry, and actually this is straight on BlackBerry's blog. For those of you kids who have never seen a BlackBerry, do you guys remember BlackBerry like back in the day? Like,
Of course,
they were like
it was
the
the
first
thing.
really
They were
cool.
force.
Yeah, exactly. They were awesome.
It was a little cell phone that had a small keyboard on the bottom half of it, and it looked like a BlackBerry because it had the little buttons, and everybody loved it.
Do you know where the name? So I was one of the back in the day, I was actually one of the first integrators of the BlackBerry server. So we had the original BlackBerry engineers come out and talk to us, and we said, "Hey, where'd you get the name?" And they said, "You want the full story?" One of our chief engineers had a white truck, and he used to park. He used to park near a blackish berry tree, and it would stain his truck, and we named it BlackBerry because of that. And I was like,
What?
I don't know if that's true, but that was the story we were told. Yeah.
I thought it was based on the look of the device itself.
No. Yeah. Anyways, so
Yeah.
BlackBerry's been synonymous with presidential candidates and that sort of stuff. I've always used BlackBerry phones. Militaries use BlackBerry because it's there's a lot of ways to secure them and do all sorts of stuff that you can manage that you can't do on other phones. So they have a pretty impressive threat intelligence team, and they reverse engineered and found this what they call a nearly impossible to detect Linux threat, which they've named the symbiote. It is probably the most impressive thing I've ever seen. Honestly, they did a fantastic analysis on this.
Well, I mean, it specializes in not being detected, but what does it actually do?
So it's your classic backdoor, right? So it reports to a command and control structure. It gives you access over the system to do whatever it is you want to do. And there's tons of these out here, right? Pieces of malware that report to what we call a C2 structure or command and control structure that give you the ability to run commands and grab data and do whatever.
So it's not just merely a remote control execution. It's a takeover kind of thing.
Yeah, and it runs at the lowest levels of the operating system. And this is for Linux.
Yeah.
So like a rootkit is what most people would call it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's very much a rootkit. And the difference between just a piece of malware and a rootkit, like a piece of malware will run on your computer and antivirus can potentially find it. It's just like another application running. This thing is running so deep in the operating system that when you try and list processes that are running on the box, it knows to pull itself out of that process list. Now, that's not super impressive.
Well,
right?
But that is pretty damn impressive. I mean, if
It's
your
bad.
operating system can't tell that you're running in a process because you've hooked it, and
Right.
you're hiding yourself, that's pretty sophisticated stuff.
It lives, and one of the reasons they called it the symbiote is it lives off of other processes. So it actually attaches itself to other running executables and what they call SO files, or in Windows would be DLL files. So it doesn't run itself.
So I remember back in the day when, before Windows, when we had DOS apps, there was I was working for a DOS MIDI sequencing company, right? So it was all in the days of amber screens and all that. And somebody called in with a tech support thing that ever since they ran our software, the computer was really slow. And so we didn't believe it. So the guy brought his computer in, and, it was like at the command line, you can, do a directory listing, and it was like line, 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 line.
Wow.
And they were standing around and they were confused. And I said, maybe it's a virus. And the head engineer went, no, bah. And then another engineer who became a really good friend of mine after that, and we played in a band together. So he said, well, let's see. Let's reboot it and do a directory. And we see that this particular, our particular whatever is a certain byte size, the executable. And we run it and we look at the executable size again, and it's bigger.
What?
Meaning that
Never
the
a good
virus
sign.
was in memory, and anything that it runs, it attaches itself to the end of the executable. And is this what you're talking about?
This is very similar. Yeah. So what's really neat is this loads. Think of it like if you guys are familiar with Windows Talk, right? It's a DLL, but in Linux, it's a .so file, whatever. It's a library file that other executables, it convinces other executables to run it. So it doesn't run itself. It convinces other executables to link it. And then if you look at the list of processes, it's not there. It pulls itself out of the list. If you use what's called LDD, which is a tool that can tell you, hey, tell me what libraries are linked to my executable. When I'm running this, like your MIDI process, when I'm running my MIDI process, tell me what DLLs or tell me what libraries are loaded.
Right.
When it sees that LDD load to look for the list of libraries, it pulls itself out of the list of loaded
crazy.
Libraries.
But
it gets worse. Which is awesome.
Okay, all right, awesome.
It's so cool. So it has the ability, if you were to pull up Wireshark, so for those of you who haven't played with Wireshark, Patrick, you want to explain what's Wireshark?
Sure. Wireshark is a packet capture. So when your computer talks over the network with any other system or computer, it packetizes. It turns into little chunks of data, and those packets are really the communication. They're like the words of the network communication. And a packet filter allows you to do filtered searches to find, I want to see how my DNS calls are going, and I want to understand how ping works, or I want to see this file download. And you can look at all the packets and reassemble them, and it's pretty nerdy stuff, and it's pretty cool. But that's, it's all available to you. And Wireshark is a free packet capture program that you can all download and play with.
We used to call them packet sniffers.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
It basically looks at network traffic between 2 points.
Well, so the reason they're called sniffers back in the day is because you'd put the network card in promiscuous mode, and so it would listen for traffic that wasn't destined for that computer.
Is it really called promiscuous mode?
It is. Because it would touch every packet.
Wow. It was very dirty. Very dirty.
Dirty packets.
It looks at all the packets in a creepy way as it goes by on the wire. That's promiscuous.
It's like it's sitting on the, in a cafe somewhere with sunglasses on, just watching everybody.
That's exactly it. That is exactly it. So, okay.
Right.
So let's say you were to, as threat hunters, when we're trying to find a piece of malware or whatnot, doing forensics, one of the things we might do is load up Wireshark and see, is my computer communicating with someplace in Russia or someplace in China or wherever where it shouldn't be, right, necessarily?
Hey, why did you say Russia and China? I don't think that's very...
I just picked the top 2 countries I'm always thinking about.
Would you rather North Korea and Iran?
And those are the other 2. So let's say you pull up, we would pull up Wireshark. What's awesome about the symbiote is it actually is hooked at the operating system so low level that when it sees Wireshark or anything that's going to grab every network packet, it pulls its own packets out of the list.
Is it a mini driver?
No. So it's in Linux, so it's actually running at like almost kernel level. So it marks its own packets as unsniffable in essence, and says no, you can't see these. These aren't packets destined for the network. So Wireshark won't see it. So you don't see it in the list of processes.
Was a British actress.
She is.
British actress.
As soon as you said that, I'm like, Minnie Driver? What does she have to do with this?
She's a hacker. It's one of the best,
Anyway,
so it does that. If you were to go into a directory, like Carl was just talking about, and then do a dir and ls and try and find a list of the files there, it hooks itself so that it can see that listing coming up and pulls itself out of the list of files. It's not marked as hidden. It literally doesn't show up in that list.
How on earth do you get rid? First of all, how do you detect? Is it? They said so. BlackBerry said it's barely undetectable.
Well, if you look for it and you can't find it, you have it.
Well, there you have it.
You bang two sticks together.
I went looking for it, found it, so therefore I don't have it.
You must not have it.
It's a poser. Seriously, how can you figure out if you have it?
So a couple different ways you could figure it out. One, don't use the same box for forensics. So if you have a packet sniffer or a firewall or something along those lines that your computer is communicating out through, use that device to do all of your analytics, right? So at my firewall, or I might use an application that watches what domains. Like for example, at my house, I have a firewall that watches all the domains that every computer in my house communicates with. So I could see if any computer in my house is going to shut down.
Wow, that makes it hard for your sons to watch porn.
Oh, if I could explain. There's so many.
Back away slowly from that comment, Jane. Just back away slowly. Nothing you say could be used positively against you here.
We're going to pretend that wasn't even there.
That's one of my best jokes ever.
And that's not saying anything.
That's true, yeah.
So that would be like, I would use a box that is literally not on the box you're interested in,
right?
Trying to detect it on.
So you want to put a box in between where the suspected infected box is and your firewall or your internet, right? So you can watch packets from it coming and going. So how would you know that it's how would you know it's packets from someone else's?
So if you read through this blog, and we'll post it, there's actually different URLs that it communicates with. So some of the hidden domains are like assets.fans is one of the domains it communicates with.
Oh.
So there are certain what sort of indicators of compromise, or what they call IOCs, that you can look for that are listed in this blog.
That would be really good. Prompt.
Like that.
So clearly symbiote hacker developers have some more work to do if they want to be completely undetectable.
Yeah, and honestly, kudos to BlackBerry for going through this analysis. This is a really impressive piece of malware.
Yeah, now if they could just get their stock price up, that'd be good.
I'm sure they'll work on it.
But
now that they've been featured on Security This Week, maybe it'll just go through the roof.
So once you know you have it, how on earth do you get rid of it?
Gasoline in a match, I'm pretty sure.
Whoa! You have to burn the box down. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, we know so many ways to hide resident in a system. And you got to imagine at the level that this piece of malware is installed, there are certain, rootkits are different than malware. Malware, you usually can just clean them up and then continue working and you're just fine. But when you start talking at something that's at the level of a rootkit, some of those even have the ability to infect firmware on the computer, like the BIOS. So when you reinstall the operating system, it reinfects it. There's also stories of rootkit level software that can infect the firmware on drive.
Jeez. So you can't even reinstall Linux. You have to literally take that box and throw it in the scrap pile.
Yep. Yeah. If you're at that rootkit firmware infected level, yeah, you just need to blacklight the chip, wipe it entirely, and then rebuild the whole box, or just throw it out. Yeah.
Jeez. That is so harsh. Or in your parlance, Dwayne, awesome. Good God, y'all. Okay, so let's move on. I'm almost just scared to use. Well, first of all, I have a Windows machine, but it's just amazing.
It's awesome.
All right, what's next?
So I think next we're talking about the Hello XD ransomware, which now drops a backdoor better than ever while encrypting your system.
Now with extra pain.
What is Hello XD ransomware?
So there's nothing really super special about Hello XD ransomware. The thing I don't understand, so it encrypts your system just like every other piece of ransomware. And interestingly enough, they actually make you communicate with them over what's called Tox chat, which is, I don't know, think like encrypted communication chat service.
Okay.
Actually, what's interesting about Tox chat, not to talk about Tox chat, but
TOX.
It's TOX chat. It's a chat service, and it purports to be a legitimate chat service. I'm sure it is.
Mm-hmm.
Where you get a public-private key encryption pair,
mm-hmm.
and then you take literally your public key and give it to a friend.
Whoa.
And then they import the public key into their chat, and now we can talk back and forth encrypted. So literally, there's no way.
Yeah.
Right. There's no way for even their own servers to see your communications.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, I guess, a great way to chat if you're a ransomware company.
I guess.
But what's interesting, what I don't understand about this, and maybe you guys can ponder why this is, if you're encrypting someone's entire system, what's the back door going to do for you? You're going to have access to encrypted files? I mean, they're exfiltrating data first. I get that. They're pulling off the legitimate files so they can, I don't know, torture you with them usually. But,
well, if I was Symbiote, I would want to get into the operating system below the level of encryption.
Right. And just,
So I think-
just hide
I
there.
think that's impossible, but I don't know.
Most of the times when a ransomware encrypts, it encrypts file types based on there being data. They don't render, most of them don't render the operating system ineffective. They don't wipe out the operating system. So if I were a ransomware person, which I'm not, and I infected your system, I might want to know when you initiated a restore from backup. And I might kill that process, or I might corrupt that process.
There's some hacker advice right there, Patrick.
Just
Hey,
saying.
ransomware, look for a restore, and if you see it, kill it.
It's not what I said, but
But that's what you said.
that would be good advice, unfortunately.
All right. Well, so this just means, how do we know if we have Hello XD? Because you're going to get a
this
notice.
is brutal. You'll know there'll be like a little ghost type guy that pops up on your computer and says, "Uh-oh, you're encrypted." And then it walks you through how you would connect to the encrypted chat, and then how you. There's also I believe, if I remember correctly, they rename most of the encrypted files as .hello as the extension, so you'll notice all those files are
Wow. Okay.
now encrypted.
And is there any antidote if you get this ransomware besides pay the ransom?
Yeah, if you get the ransomware, you're kind of SOL. The encryption algorithm they're using is actually really good. So you're in trouble at that point. Once you see the hey, you've been infected, you're kind of screwed at that
And are they
point.
going after just regular people, or are they going after a particular kind of user?
Yeah, I don't know that they actually have a target in mind, other than if you can pay, they're happy about that. That's pretty much
That's their primary. They check your credit score.
Wow.
So I would say, keep your antivirus up to date. Use Windows Defender because it's awesome. And
Hey,
just,
going back to
careful
Symbiote,
what you click on.
one thing that occurred to me is that Mac OS is based on Linux.
It is.
And isn't Android based on Linux?
It is.
So,
Yeah.
so let's hear it for Windows, babies. Neener. You remember in the 90s when all the Mac people used to go, Windows is full of bugs and malware, neener.
Used to.
Right?
We
still
don't
saying
have
that.
Yeah.
viruses in the Mac world, neener.
It's just because you can't find them.
But can you imagine? I mean, Mac computers are wicked expensive. Can you imagine spending $20,000 on a Mac, getting
Right.
infected with Symbiote, and having to burn it to the ground.
Oh my God. That would suck.
I mean, technically, with some of the things that are out there now, you should replace the drives if you want to burn a system down too.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Because the controllers can get infected.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Ouch. All right.
We're just talking about scary.
Just in case you weren't scared enough about Symbiote.
Now, luckily with Symbiote, they do have a targeted market right now, which is the financial sector in Latin America.
Oh,
Not sure why, but this is
our primary demographic.
Well, what if your demographic is school districts?
Oh, then you're probably a teenager and you don't want to take final exams.
Like in New Jersey.
Like in New Jersey school districts, for example.
You like that transition? That was a good transition.
That was pretty good. I thought that was
cool.
Yeah. So here's a story from NJ.com, which it's New Jersey, NewJersey.com. Final exams canceled in a New Jersey school district after ransomware attack cripples computers.
Oh. This,
The revenge of
unfortunately,
the
I
script
wish.
kiddies.
Yeah, I wish I could say this is a not so common event, but when looking through like the educational districts, so we've done red team engagements for education districts in the past. It's one of the things we actually do to try and help out as many educational districts as we can. And unfortunately, there are a lot of really open systems in school systems. Just because of the nature of learning, right? It's not like you hire an entire security team to lock things down.
Sure.
And these things happen. When this article came up, I started looking around like, well, how many school districts have been infected by ransomware this year? And it's the list is so large, it's absurd. So yeah, this is just a scary reminder that this could be a targeted attack.
Mm-hmm.
Where I don't know, some ransomware gang is looking to extort money from a public school district.
Yeah.
Or it could just be, a kid running, a piece of ransomware because he doesn't want to take final exams.
Yeah.
So,
the definition of script kiddie.
That's right.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
That's right. Do they think that this was done by kids, or did it look more professional?
So, they're pretty tight-lipped right now. So, could it be? Maybe. But it's hard to tell at this point. I think all they did was actually force them to use pen and paper, which for all their exams, which that's got to suck. But
yeah, backfired.
Right.
Damn. Oh no, you're still going to take the exam. You just have to write it all out.
Sucker.
Wow.
So yeah, that sucks. So moral of the story here, unfortunately, I think the security industry needs to put more time into helping as many educational, facilities as possible. Because they, like your public school districts don't typically get $200 million to go put towards security.
But they are
firms
big targets, though.
But they are big targets, right? So I think there needs to be a better way for security companies to donate time or whatnot, an incentive of some sort to help, educational facilities. We do it as much as we can, but we're a smaller security shop, so there needs to be a better way to help. But.
So what's new in the world of Felina?
Felina
sounds like John song, I think.
Is it? Sounds like an Italian lady's name. Felina.
Yeah, either that or a type of pasta.
A type of pasta.
Hey, we gonna have the rigatoni or the Felina tonight?
I like it. So Felina, as we had talked about last week, Felina was the interesting Microsoft Office exploit that gave you the ability to run all sorts of stuff, even if you had, let's say, a rich text document, you didn't double click on it, but it still ran malware in the background. Mm-hmm. And Microsoft said, yeah, we're not going to fix it. Yeah. So at this point, now Russian hackers have said, hey, this might be an interesting thing to use against Ukraine. So
yeah, they're focusing on the media.
Yes. Which...
because they need to control the media.
Well, it's interesting because you might say, okay, well, why media? Why would you focus on media? Radio stations, newspapers, that sort of stuff. That's the focus of this attack. But right now, and I think Patrick would probably agree, Ukraine is playing an amazing media game, in the war against Russia. So,
oh yeah, from the beginning.
Yeah.
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 Well, not just their own media, but Russian media too, right?
Well, so we have it on good authority that when Zelensky put out the call for everybody to like help out, he called on marketing firms as well.
Oh yeah.
Mm.
And their graphics for the losses Russia has, even if their numbers are high, which I don't really know that they are, they look great. They have an infographic with the number of losses that Russia's endured.
Well, and even take a look at like some of the media that the videos that have come out and that sort of stuff. I mean, their production value is awesome. It's like, yeah, they're on next level media offensive, which is pretty awesome. You see Russian actors, and right now it's purported to be Russian actors, the Russian cyber team Sandworm, that's doing this. So, and that was reported from Ukraine. So, you got to take some of that with a grain of salt. But.
You know what I know about sandworms?
What's that?
They bite.
What?
Ask me how I know.
How do you know?
So I used to go fishing for flounder in Mystic, Connecticut when I lived there. And we used sandworms. And they look like, centipedes with lots of legs, but they frickin' bite you.
That's
I think
horrifying.
those are actually centipedes.
No, they're sandworms.
I don't think I've ever seen a sandworm, or maybe I've seen it and I just thought it was a sandworm.
Yes, if you watch Star Wars, you've seen a giant sandworm.
Or Dune.
Yeah, Dune.
That's exactly what they look like.
Yep.
Horrifying.
Horrifying.
I still don't understand. Speaking of fishing, I still don't understand how people can noodle. Have you heard of noodling?
Yes, noodling is where you stick your whole hand down a catfish's mouth and grab it by the intestines or whatever and pull it up.
But how do you get his email address?
Joe at catfishes.com. Catfish.com.
I mean, in order to fish someone, you have to have an address.
Right. How do you get him to click on that little link?
That's the new fishing with users? You stick your hand down their mouth.
That's the hook. They got to click on the hook.
All right. So there's going to have to be noodling. Will have to be some offshoot of fishing in the hacking world.
It's when you reach through the window and grab the papers off their desk. That's noodling. There, I've coined a cyber term. I can die.
Wait a minute.
In peace.
Noodling is when you use Felina, right?
Felina.
I like mine better. When you reach through the window and grab the papers right off their desk, that's noodling.
Uncle.
That's noodling. You've done it.
All right. So these emails got sent to more than 500 recipients at media organizations. How many of them fell for it?
Oh, that's a good question. Hopefully none.
Yeah.
Although probably some.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, it doesn't say.
Yeah, I don't see any statistics on that.
Doesn't say. But by the end of April, the U.S. set a reward of $10 million for anyone who could help locate 6 individuals believed to be members of Sandworm. Wow.
There are a lot. There's a lot of Sandworm's been around a long time. They're not a new group. They're the old hat group. So
all right. So not something that's going to probably affect you directly, unless you're a media company in Ukraine, in which you probably already know about it. Mm-hmm. But still a fascinating story. All right. So let's talk about Microsoft now, because that's where Felina came from. But in particular, some Exchange servers got hacked last week. What happened?
So the Exchange hacks here are still a lot of the older exploits, like proxy logon attack that we talked about. Shoot, I don't know how long ago, guys.
Yeah,
6 months, 9 months ago.
For the on-prem,
Exchange servers. Yeah, honestly,
right.
I mean,
which are a dying breed.
If you haven't patched them.
Yeah, if you haven't patched your Exchange server, shame on you.
If you have on-prem Exchange servers, still, shame on you.
Shame on you, right.
What are you doing?
No, just let Microsoft manage it. If you're going to use Exchange, go to the cloud and let Microsoft manage it.
Exactly.
And be done with it.
All right, anyway.
But what's interesting about this is, so this is a common story of go patch, but the other problem that you run into is these new infections with the Black Cat ransomware actually move around the network using what's called psexec.
Mm-hmm.
And just psexec is a way for you to execute remote commands on boxes, on remote computers.
It's
right? So I
PowerShell,
can
right?
be on a network. Yeah, it's PowerShell execute remotely.
Yeah.
So I can remotely send a PowerShell command to another computer, and if I have administrative access, then I can.
And most of the time, that's a
network.
really good thing because it's very useful for people to do their work in IT.
It's quite convenient.
Yeah.
Carl.
Patrick,
Quite.
wait for it.
Agreed.
Wait for it.
Agreed.
It's convenient, Patrick. What does that mean?
It means it's not secure. Convenience is the enemy of security.
That's what I was waiting for.
Patrick. Agreed.
Patrick gets royalties every time he says that.
He
I
does.
do. I just
Cha-ching.
And have it
get
printed on
paid.
shirts.
Cha-ching.
I just don't know what account it's going to. You caught me reading ahead.
That's okay. So this is really not applicable unless you've got Exchange servers running on-prem.
You've been warned.
Mm-hmm. Don't do it.
Yeah. I mean, you can. You just have to be vigilant.
All right.
Sure.
Oh,
But it's painful.
Hey,
You might as well just move to the cloud.
all right. Now we brought up that Android is based on Linux, which is vulnerable to symbiote. But now there's, I guess, a new report out about malware on the Google Play Store.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. So Android malware on the Google Play Store gets 2 million downloads. This is tough. If you're the Google Play Store or you're the Apple Store and you're looking to put things, have open developers have the ability to create whatever they want and put
Right.
them in the store, you need to vet them in some way. And Apple tries to do a good job. Google tries to do a good job. But it's, take a look at something like Symbiote. Like at a Google developer who's looking at a submitted app. And I don't know how many submitted apps they get a day, but I'm guessing it's more than one or two.
Yeah.
It's probably in the tens of thousands of apps get submitted per day. So how do you go through all of those apps and determine, they're not doing anything malicious? Well, it's damn near impossible. So at this point, there are apps, the Pip Picture Photo Editor app, the Wild and Exotic Animal Wallpaper app. I would be so pissed off if I downloaded that app for wallpapers and it was stealing
Infecting.
stuff off my phone.
Well, we have to define malware here because I know this, that the stores basically let's say the Apple Store, iPhone has a setting which you could say, don't track me. And all that is just one particular cookie. And it's like the super user identifier that has been in use. Apple invented it, I think, forever. But that's only one. And there's something like 30 some odd more ways that app developers can track you. And it's not really the app developers. It's the companies that they install the SDKs, and the SDK basically company says, hey, use this and you'll earn money because they're stealing your data, your customers' data. So just because the app isn't infected with a quote unquote known piece of malware, just about all apps in the App Store can get around this tracking stuff and track you and track whatever they want. I saw one of the tactics is to track stuff like temperature and frequency of use and all of and location. And from those things, that creates a digital fingerprint of your phone. And that's how they can track you as you move around and on your device. Yeah, it's crazy.
Basically, they don't have to have an identifying serial number.
Right.
They have enough random detail to say, oh, I've seen this one before.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the way they identify sharks by their scars or their, the coloring on the fins.
Now let's leave the lawyers out of it. We haven't made enemies with them yet.
Sharks. Haven't we?
All right. But this story is about, bona fide malware, not just stuff that tracks you, because that's in every app. But 2 million downloads of malware on the Google Play Store.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Yikes.
Or is it? I don't know. I mean, we see this quite frequently. And then a lot of people will ask me, like, okay, so how do I know whether a piece of software is like, how do you know what you should or shouldn't install from the Google Play Store?
Yeah.
And there's a couple different pieces of advice I typically would give like my kids or whoever who would ask me this.
Use your iPhone.
First off.
Yeah, I was just going to say
And all my kids do have an iPhone.
Yeah.
So secondly, let's say you are using an Android device or an iPhone, honestly, before you click install on whatever app it is, scroll all the way to the bottom. Generally, there is a developer link for who the developer is who created this. See what they've created before and see whether their website looks like a legitimate software company website or whether it's like, doesn't actually go somewhere. That's one indicator. Another is every single one of these apps, either in the Google Play Store or in the Apple Store, has the permissions that are required for the app. Like needs access to your camera, needs access to your find location, which is like where exactly you are, not just general, like you're in the US.
Yeah.
Look at those permissions and do those permissions actually match what you think the app should need? Right? So, in this particular case, it's tough because one of them was a camera photo editor.
Yeah.
So it needs access to the camera, right? And it
if you go to your dentist and they tell you to drop your pants, you're in trouble. So
that's a great analogy, Patrick. Just trying to see how it fits.
I don't know what
the
happened
last
to your
time I went to
dentist.
my dentist, my pants were unbuttoned. I don't know why. It's got knocked out in the chair.
Keep it clean, boys. That's funny.
But
so those would be my advice. Is just honestly, just double check the permissions that you've given apps, and make sure you don't install.
Also, you can look for behavior things like your battery is draining at an unusually high level. It's unusually hot. So that means that there's something going on in the background that you didn't know. And if you can't find it just through the regular channels because, they've got some symbiote level hiding going on, then, maybe it's time to either reboot or pave it.
Do I have to issue a disclaimer when I'm going to say a grumpy old man statement?
No, everybody knows you, Patrick.
How about you use your phone as a phone?
Oh.
Damn it.
That's crazy talk.
Back in my day.
A phone was a phone. You didn't call somebody and say, hey, where are you? Because you're attached to the wall.
Oh, Patrick.
All right. All right. So that's about it. Just, use an iPhone, folks. It's a little more safe, in our opinion.
I mean, 100%. I hate to say that, but it's true.
It is true.
They're heavily invested and Google's tangentially interested. And so there is a big difference in the security, and it's based on our experience of trying to hack into them.
Yeah, and Android's a more open operating system, right? So they went different ways. Like iOS is completely closed. So there may be stuff in there, but it's hard for you to reverse engineer, whereas
we're going to get some hate mail from that one.
Well, okay.
Yeah, Android is an open OS, so it's easier.
I have gotten malware on Android phones, but never on an iPhone.
That doesn't mean it can't happen.
Doesn't mean
you still
it can't
should
happen.
Follow the same rules.
No, it absolutely can happen. Yeah, look at the Pegasus from the
the Israelis.
Yeah, exactly. That was.
And by the way, we have a policy here at Security This Week that you should reboot your phone once a week. So after you're done listening to this, reboot your phone. And Dwayne will be happy.
Patch all your things.
All right, Hertz bleed.
Hertz bleed.
First you hurts, and then you bleed.
So what's interesting is this sounds really scary, and the thing that I don't get is Intel's like, it's not that big a deal. But then when you read through it, so okay, let me back up. Hertz bleed is the ability for you to potentially pull cryptographic keys out of your processor. So if you're using encryption that the processor has the keys for, right? Your AMD or your Intel processor has keys for. There's an ability through what they call, through what's called the DVFS, which is the dynamic voltage and frequency scaling system of the CPU.
Power management throttling.
Yeah. So imagine this. Your CPU is doing, and there's a massive white paper on this that you could read through, and it actually is a really good read. But imagine you're doing mathy things on your CPU, as CPUs like to do, And when you do cryptographic mathy things, the voltage on your CPU goes up by a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, they have the ability to read the amount of the voltage that's going up and down and actually exfiltrate the keys, which is super interesting.
I've always found that amazing.
Yeah.
That they can make.
It's very much like a Rowhammer style thing, right? Where
it's kind of, I mean, the analogy I come up with is it's like monitoring someone's heart rate and blood pressure and figuring out what they're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's cool. It's cool stuff to see. But then sometimes, like for example, with Rowhammer, they could heat up certain, pins based on what they're doing inside of a piece of software, right, and then, force getting administrative access to a box. In this particular case, they can exfiltrate data that shouldn't be accessible at all. But what's interesting about this, and this is why this is called a side channel attack, because you're not attacking the main channel, which is trying to crack open the cryptographic store. You're listening on a side channel and seeing what effects happen when the cryptographic store is opened and crypto keys are processed.
And it apparently works on Intel and AMD processors, right?
Correct. More Intel. I think Intel has like all of their processors are affected, and AMD has certain processors of theirs that are affected.
Neither of them are planning to release patches.
Nope. So you'll see this. And what's interesting about this one is the researchers who put out the paper actually say they can do this remotely. That's the part that I thought was awesome too. Yeah, is
remote timing attacks.
When Dwayne says awesome, nothing good is going to happen.
We found a way to mount remote timing attacks on constant time cryptographic code running on modern x86 processors with Hertz bleed. Yikes.
Yeah, so the fact that you can do this remotely, I would be personally concerned about.
I would be too.
But
in order for Intel and AMD to fix this, don't they need to fix it at the hardware level? And is that why they can't patch it?
Yeah, I think they would honestly have to fix how the processor innately works doing the type of work that it needs to do when it pulls out crypto keys. So it's big.
So if you're planning on building a computer or buying one, why don't you just wait a few months?
And maybe there'll be a new chip that comes out.
Well, you're probably going to wait a few months anyway because they're twice as expensive as they were this time last year. Maybe not twice as much.
So if you do go to hertzbleed.com, so hertzbleed.com, you could read the white paper here, which will quickly gets into a lot of heavy electrical engineering and that sort of stuff. But the more important part is also at the bottom. They have some questions and answers that say, am I affected by Hertz bleed?
Okay.
And it says likely yes, and then explains what that means. And then it says, what's the impact? Should I be worried? Is there a CVE? So they go through all of the questions you may have around this. Is there a workaround? Right. So technically, yes. However, it would affect your system performance 100%.
So they're saying everybody is likely affected by it?
Is susceptible to it. I'll be more clear there. All Intel processors currently are affected.
Okay.
And most of the AMD processors are currently affected. Now, does that mean you have it? Probably not.
All right.
Because imagine what this is doing. This is trying to pull cryptographic keys from the processor. So there's very unique situations why you do that and why that would be useful.
Go ahead. Give our listeners some career advice.
Career advice. So imagine this. Do you guys remember the turbo button?
Oh, yeah.
On computers?
Yes.
Okay, so it used to be you could tell your computer to run slow, or you could push this little turbo button and your computer would run faster.
Welcome to 1987.
Right. So computers ever since have been like, that's pretty stupid to give that button to users because all of us just left the turbo button in, right?
Yeah, of course, except when we ran games that were timed to the processor, and it turned out they were twice as fast, and they were impossible to play. That's why they had the turbo button, so you could turn it off to play games or that programs that were timed to the processor.
Now processors do that automatically, and it's a power management mode. So could you turn off those power management modes in the BIOS? Yes. you can say, okay, I don't want my processor to automatically manage how much power it's using for whatever. Just always give it the full amount of power. It's more wasteful on electricity, but then it makes these types of attacks harder. So
you want to hear a story of dumb from my life? So
Yeah.
of course you do. So I used to use a laptop for video recording and stuff. And the CPU fan would come on invariably, and it was really effing loud. It's a gaming laptop, so it would be like, and it would destroy my recording. So I went looking, and I found that in Windows, you can go into the system, and you can set a maximum processor percentage. And it's 100% by default. So when it says when it needs more power, it goes up to 100%. But I tamped it down to like 80%. And that fixed the problem.
Nice.
But I thought that was the problem. But one of the problems is there's a function key on the laptop that turns the CPU fan on that I was accidentally hitting.
So you got a slower computer and
I had the problem. Hey, at least it was slower.
Slower user.
At least it was
the
slower.
fan went on, but at least it was slower.
Right. Yay. That's awesome.
Isn't that cool?
That is cool.
All right. So, I don't know. That's kind of depressing. Let's talk about more Linux botnet infection stuff.
Botnet.
Because that makes me happy. All right. So, this article is called New Peer-to-Peer Botnet Infects Linux Servers with Crypto Miners. Okay. Crypto miners meaning a server that you use to mine cryptocurrency, generally with a very expensive graphics card, right?
Mm-hmm. This one's interesting. So first off, we see fluxes in crypto mining.
Yeah.
From malware groups and malicious attackers.
If I was crypto mining right now, I'd be more worried about the cost of my cryptocurrency than the price.
So that's the weird one of the weird parts about this particular attack. Maybe they're just behind the times, but usually what happens is when crypto is on the rise, the cost of Bitcoin is on the rise. All of these ransomware people switch over to running crypto mining on your computers rather than encrypting your computer because they want the CPU. It's actually more valuable having your compute power than it is encrypting your stuff.
Right. And they're probably not going to make much money off of what you can mine in the background, but, add 1 million computers together and you've got some serious money.
But on the flip side, when crypto is in the toilet, usually they switch back over to ransomware, which is nice. They diversify.
And that explains all the ransomware in the news last week, right?
Right. Exactly. Because crypto's in the toilet, so they go to ransomware because they'll make steady money there. And then when crypto goes up, they stop doing ransomware. It's kind of weird that this is a new variant of a botnet called PanChan that's come out and is now crypto mining, which is odd. The other thing that's interesting is this is a Japanese botnet, which we don't hear much about the Japanese in the offensive cyber criminal gang world, but so that's another surprising thing. But a couple other interesting things here. First off, it's propagating through an SSH worm. So here again, Linux boxes, like you had pointed out, anything that has a secure shell function, they'll log into and try and install these crypto miners. And then it's communicating over a C2, which is Discord.
Oh.
So this is actually, I don't know if you guys have played with this, but this is actually really cool.
No.
So corporate communications applications have been targeted recently as C2 communications channels. So if I'm embedded into a corporate system and I want to communicate out, and I don't want to use my own custom TCP/IP protocol because that's easily detected.
Right.
I would communicate out over Slack. I would communicate out over DNS.
WhatsApp.
I would communicate out over... Yeah, exactly. Anything that's normally would be used within the company, I would use those channels.
DNS. We talked about hiding in DNS.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So now people are using Slack, which is actually really awesome. There's some cool Slack C2 platforms out there where I can install, and we played around with these, and we actually have them implemented.
I don't know what he means by awesome, Pat. Do you? I can
so
never
cool.
tell. Is that good?
It's so cool.
Very bad.
It's so cool. It's so cool. Don't listen to Patrick and Carl. It's cool, kids. You can deploy your malware or your backdoor with a Discord C2. So what happens is it communicates out to Discord, to your own Discord server, and you can go into a channel and say DIR. And every single computer that's listening will then run a DIR and tell you what's in the directory and report back to Discord, which is really kind of neat. So they're using Discord as their C2. So, moral of the story here, if you have a massive, Linux farm, maybe disable Discord. You probably don't have a lot of Discord communications going back and forth, and that'll cut down a lot of the C2.
Okay. Is there a way to detect it?
There is. This one's not very stealth. This one's not a symbiote. Thank you very much. So there are malware binaries that are actually literally dropped onto the system from Discord, mind you. Yeah. That you can look for and clean up, and we'll put the article out here so that you guys can go take a look.
Okay. All right. Now that brings us to our title story. In the title of this show is "Knocking Our Socks Off." RSocks. What is RSocks, and how did the FBI go about disrupting it?
So RSocks is a Russian malware botnet. So malware, malicious software installed. Botnet is where you have the ability to control massive amounts of computers or IoT, Internet of Things or Android smartphones, or really any device. So I can take all these devices and have them do one thing, like denial of service or crypto mine or whatever.
Yep.
So there is a massive RSocks, and when we say massive, it was in the millions of devices that were a part of this. Yeah.
Enough to cause real damage.
Yeah. Honestly, very impressive work by the FBI, the DOJ, and then also the FBI actually worked with Germany, the Netherlands, and the UK. So great interagency, undercover work for some of this to figure out, how many computers were infected, which computers were infected, and what they were doing. In essence, what's weird about RSocks is like a proxy software. So I don't know if you guys have played around with proxy software much, but think of it like
Patrick
VPN.
has.
But
I sort of have
for web,
not recently, but.
Yeah, so you can send your traffic through a proxy, and it will. Let's say you wanted to watch a UK TV show that Netflix won't allow you to watch in the United States. You could proxy your traffic through a proxy in the UK, and then watch it there. So lots of people
usually have to have a UK account for Netflix or wherever you're going to watch, because they're going to know based on your account that you're based in.
Yeah, but they also enforce based on where you are sometimes.
And the browsers have gotten hip to this. I know this.
Yeah, they have.
Because, however, I think I told you this story, right? There's a version of Firefox a couple versions ago that if you have to disable Firefox from automatically updating, and you have to put up with the update now message box every 10 minutes. But if you run that older version, you can use that to, access Amazon Prime, whatever, if you've got a VPN. But now, if you're using Chrome or Edge and you've got a VPN, you'll go to watch something in the UK only show, and they'll say, "Got to be in the UK." So,
yeah, I've noticed a lot of these applications like Netflix and whatnot get very good about detecting where you're at. But what's interesting about this is it appears the RSocks botnet would infect computers, and then you could actually purchase usage of those as proxy servers. So I could route all my hacking traffic through your computer if it was infected, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Unless you're the one getting routed through, then it's not very cool.
Not cool.
So according to the United States Department of Justice, the cost for accessing the RSocks proxy protocol ranged from $30 a day, where you would be able to route through 2,000 different, could be home computers.
Yeah. Wow.
Or all the way up to $200 a day, and you could route through 90,000 computers.
Wow.
So it took them a while for them to identify, hundreds of thousands, 325,000 compromised devices. I found this interesting. They also said at 3 victim locations with consent, investigators replaced the compromised devices with government-controlled computers, i.e. honeypots.
Wow.
All 3 were subsequently compromised by RSocks. So it sounds like when you're infected with RSocks, it then starts to metastasize inside the organization as well, giving them more proxies and more botnets that they can sell.
So it obviously wasn't stealthy enough like Symbiote to escape detection.
The symbiote. No. Yeah. And it was, you got to imagine like this, they were running it as a service, right? You could go in and literally give them $200 and get 90,000 computers that you could run, a denial service or whatever you wanted through there. And those, because they're so loud, those services, they're going to be taken down. The problem is they're in many, many different countries, so who has jurisdiction? And that's one of the reasons I wanted to highlight this story is just, it's awesome that the FBI was working with Germany, Netherlands, and the UK to work together to take this thing down.
And there's more and more of that kind of cooperation because it's required. That these threats aren't going to respect boundaries or borders, and so we have to create, international agencies to do things.
We should have an international cyber.
I wouldn't doubt
cyber
that
NATO.
Interpol has something like that. I just haven't heard. I don't recall hearing specifically about that.
That'd be cool.
So kudos to the FBI and all of their partners for knocking this one down, for literally knocking our socks off.
And there it is.
You waited the whole show.
For that,
it's a long walk.
it's a very long walk.
Okay, man. Take your elephant to the dentist, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.
Your appointment's at 2:30.
Oh, God. Oh.
Bye-bye.